Can you hear us now?
I can hear you guys.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe it's me.
Could you hear me
Oh,
before
it's
or
on
just
me.
now?
Sorry. Let me try back.
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
Here's now? I can hear you guys.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe it's me.
Could you hear me
Oh,
before
it's
or
on
just
me.
now?
Sorry. Let me try back.
So Maddie,
We can hear you.
we can. So Maddie, you gotta mute the YouTube, I think.
Maybe it's me.
Could you hear me
Oh,
before
it's
or
on
just
me.
now? That's
Matt,
what I
you can
was.
also close
You
the
can,
YouTube tab. You won't stop the live stream if you wish.
yeah. That's the thing that happens. All right. So it looks like we're ready to go. We have an exciting presentation today. And so I hope we have the attention of everybody attending. If you'd like to share some feedback, that will be great. We have Doreen back with us today with some updates on her thesis. She is preparing for the defense. Doreen, do you guys have the defense dates or the week of the defense?
Yes, we are going to have our defense from 14th September.
September, not August, September.
It's September, but we have to submit our thesis or dissertation
Okay.
by 31st of July, yes.
Well, that's nice because I think in the past maybe it was a little bit earlier, so you have some time. All right, so if there are particular areas that you want feedback on, please let us know as you go through, Doreen. And I'll flag too
Okay.
that Doreen, for the defense itself, you have what, maximum of 20 minutes or something?
Yes, 20 minutes.
Okay, so quite a challenge. So let's see how we can do today.
Wow.
And you can go ahead and put it in the slideshow mode there.
Okay, I don't know. What do you guys see right now?
We see it, but if you press the button on the very bottom, on the right, yeah, that one.
Okay, do you see the presentation?
Yes, it looks perfect.
Okay. So good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Doreen Msemakweli. I'll take you through my thesis progress, and it is titled Moderators of Effectiveness of a Brief Negotiation Intervention for Harmful Alcohol Use in Injured Adults at Northern Zone Referral Hospital in Tanzania from 2020 to 2025. Okay. So this is my presentation outline. And this is the list of abbreviation that we're going to see in this presentation. Starting with the definition of key terms, standard definition, harmful alcohol use is a pattern of alcohol consumption that causes damage to physical or mental health and may result in adverse social consequences for the drinker and others that surround this person. A moderator is a variable that influences the direction or magnitude of the relation between the intervention and the outcome. Now, brief negotiation intervention is a typical single session clinical intervention that takes place between 5 and 30 minutes to deliver advice, counseling, motivational enhancement, and/or behavioral skills to reduce substance use and its consequences. So for the purpose of this study, harmful alcohol use is alcohol consumption behavior measured using total drinking days as frequency and number of binge drinking days as quantity reported in the previous 28 days from baseline to 3 months of follow-up using timeline follow-back diary, whereby when we speak of total drinking days, these are the number of days in the preceding 28 days on which any alcohol was consumed, and this is going to be used as our primary outcome, whereby binge drinking days is defined as the number of days in which 5 or more standard drinks were consumed by men, and 4 or more by women, and this is going to be our secondary outcome. So starting with the introduction, harmful alcohol use still remains a leading cause of global health challenge in this 21st century, as it has been documented by WHO that approximately 2.6 million deaths occur annually, and this is globally, and it is equivalent to 4.7 deaths percent, whereby it is also associated with more than 200 health conditions, including non-communicable diseases, injuries, but also violence. And 39% of adults are current drinkers. So when we narrow down the burden to sub-Saharan African countries, we see that 18.4 liters are consumed per year, and we are talking about pure alcohol consumption. And the moderate that is set, the standard is 6.3 per year. And we see from these statistics, we see that we are 22% above the global average. And 70% of these sub-Saharan Africa adults who drink are lifetime, 70% of the adults are lifetime abstainers. So those minority who are drinking catastrophic amounts of alcohol. And this is because there is widespread use of unrecorded and homebrewed alcohol. Coming to Tanzania, lifetime alcohol use prevalence is high, and it is approximately 86.4%, whereby 9.4 liter per year is consumed per person, and even the age is no longer 18 and above, it is now from 15 and above. And we can see that alcohol use prevalence is 6.8%, which means it's like two times higher that of Africa regional average of 3.7%. Now, a study that was conducted at KSMC showed that 30% of all injured patients screened positive for harmful alcohol drinking at presentation. So after seeing the global rise of harmful alcohol use and the consequences, WHO was not quiet. So it came up with strategies or prioritized reduction of harmful alcohol use via Standard Development Goal 3, which stated good health and well-being, under the target of 3.5 of strengthening prevention and treatment of substance use, with the aim of reduction of per capita alcohol consumption by 2030 of 20%. Now, to support achieving of this Standard Development Goal 3.5, WHO came up with global strategy to reduce harmful alcohol use and safer technical package, whereby each letter in safer has its meaning, but we are going to stress more on F, which means to facilitate access to screening, brief interventions, and treatment as the only health system-oriented action recommended with proven effectiveness at the community level. So how do we enhance this health system-oriented action? Is via brief negotiation intervention, which are delivered 5 to 45 minutes using motivational interviewing techniques. And these BNIs are specifically designed for fast-paced and high-burden environments. Now, when we're talking about fast-paced and high-burden environment, we're talking about emergency departments. Now, this is because at the emergency department, there's high concentration of alcohol-related injuries and it presents as a unique teachable moment following crisis or injury. Now, after seeing this opportunity, a randomized control trial was conducted at KSMC, known as Punguza Pombe kwa Afya Yako, a culture-adapted BNI especially for acutely injured adults presenting at KSMC Emergency Department. It was conducted under two arms, the usual care and the BNI, and it showed that it was effective by reducing 1.2 fewer binge drinking days, and this was statistically significant. And this is also consistent with studies that were conducted in other high-income countries, which showed that still there is effectiveness of reduction of harmful alcohol use by those people who received the intervention arm compared to those who received the control arm. Now, emergency department brief interventions went further to assess which subgroups benefit most from the intervention, and these studies actually showed heterogeneity of the results. Like some showed gender and education level moderate the effect of the intervention, and others showed that there was a universal delivery without subgroup pre-selection is operational feasible. That means that like the intervention can actually be given to anyone because no subgroup was seen to be effective more than the other. So these inconsistencies that we see across emergency department settings could be explained by moderator variables. Now, when we're talking about moderator variables, these are patient characteristics that amplify, attenuate, or eliminate brief negotiation intervention effectiveness. The key question now, for whom does the brief negotiation intervention work best in order to be able to localize or to be able to select these people and give them the intervention more compared to other, because as you can see, we have limited resources. Now, these factors may be related to patient characteristics, treatment dosing, fidelity factors, and even site-specific factors. So this brings us to our conceptual framework, which was adapted and modified from different models such as teachable moment theory, which shows that from the time the patient sustained an injury to the time the patient arrived at the emergency department, they gain that there is a moment of like a teaching moment whereby a person understands what they did that caused them to arrive at the emergency department. And we can see that these factors are such as social-demographic factors, psychological factors, alcohol severity, and injury-related factors. All these have strength and ability to direct how the brief intervention will cause the effect. So we can see we have the intervention, which leads to the outcome of interest under the influence of these moderating factors. So coming to the problem, despite that brief negotiation intervention has been implemented at KSMC Emergency Department as recommended by WHO, the evidence from high-income countries that suggests that the intervention effectiveness vary. Some individuals benefit substantially while others show little or no improvement. And the heterogeneity in the outcome is influenced by these characteristics such as patient and injury-related factors. But these potential moderators remain poorly studied in sub-Saharan Africa, especially Tanzania, whereby we have already brief negotiation intervention done at KSMC. So without understanding for whom the brief negotiation intervention works best, implementation risk being inefficient and poorly targeted, limiting the public health impact for effective intervention and hindering the achievement of Standard Development Goal 3.5. Now, coming to the study objectives, broadly, we are going to evaluate the average reduction and then moderators of the brief negotiation intervention for harmful alcohol use in injured adults presenting to KSMC Emergency Department from 2020 to 2025. Now, specifically, first, we are going to evaluate the average reduction of total drinking days among injured adults who received brief negotiation intervention versus usual care at Northern Zone Referral Hospital in Tanzania at 3 months of follow-up. Then we are going to evaluate the average reduction in binge drinking days among injured adults who received brief negotiation intervention versus usual care. And then we are going to examine the factors that moderate the effectiveness of brief negotiation intervention in reducing harmful alcohol use among these injured adults. So coming to the methodology part, starting with the parent study, this is the parent study was an individual randomized control trial known as Punguza Pombe kwa Afya Yako, PPKY, translates as Reduce Alcohol for Your Health, which was conducted from October 2020 to 2025. It included adult injured patients greater or equal to 18 years, and they either self-reported that they used alcohol, or audit greater than 8 suggested that they used alcohol, or breathalyzer was greater than 0.0, and they were able to access mobile phones for SMS. The exclusion criteria were prisoners, those who were severely ill and had cognitive impairment that they couldn't consent. So randomization was done in 3 arms. For the intervention arm, that we had PPKY only, PPKY plus standardized messages, booster, and PPKY with personalized messages. And then the other arm was the control arm, which was, they just received the usual care. So the PPKY was done under FRAMES model, that is feedback, responsibility, advice, menu, empathy, and self-efficacy, and it was given for 30 minutes, delivered by a nurse in the emergency department, which was patient-centered and not judgmental. And data collection method was done by phone-based assessment and timeline fallback procedure. So for the current study, this study that I'm conducting actually, so this is the secondary analysis of the PPKY, and it was done the same site as the parent study, and I'm also conducting within the same study period from October 2020 to 2025. So for my inclusion criteria, it includes all patients in the PPKY trial with 3 months of follow-up, and exclusion criteria, those who missed the allocation arm completely. And then randomization for my current study, all BNI arms will be combined, means the PPKY only, PPKY with standardized and PPKY with personalized will be combined as one arm versus the usual care. Then analysis population, first I utilized the intention to treat as my primary analysis population. So means I used all those patients that were in there, were allocated the treatment arms. And then for my sensitivity, I used per protocol 1, that means the complete case, and per protocol 2, that means I used only those with booster arms for more robust results. So this brings us to our consort flow diagram, whereby we can see in the beginning, we had 674 participants who were eligible. 1 missed the treatment allocation, so we remained with 673. And those who were allocated in the usual arm were 171, and those who were allocated in the BNI arm were 502. Now we can see that after 3 months of follow-up, we had 29 were lost to follow-up in the usual care, and 12 were missing out, or had the missing outcome. So we remained with 130 in the usual care. And then when we come to the brief negotiation intervention arm, we had 101 in the, we had 23 had missing outcome, so remained with 378. Now, for the purpose of my primary analysis population, all these who were lost to follow-up were actually returned under mice, and in order to restore the intention to treat principle. So I at the end of the day, I remained with 673 participants with their original allocated arms. But then for complete case, I used 130 for usual care, and I used 378 for brief negotiation intervention. Coming to the dependent variable, my primary outcome was total drinking days, that is range from 0 to 28, as it directly measures harmful alcohol use frequency. And secondary outcome was binge drinking days, that is count of days with 5 or more drinks for men, 4 or more drinks for women, and this measures harmful alcohol use quantity. And the instrument used for this both outcome was timeline follow-back procedure. Coming to the intervention, we had the treatment arm, treatment variable, which is the brief negotiation intervention. As I explained earlier, that the brief negotiation intervention arm was collapsed into one arm, and the usual care was the other arm, which will be used as the reference. So this is the list of the moderator that were pre-specified via different literature reviews in order to come up with some of the moderators that can be tested according to the data set that I had. We had education level, employment type, marital status, mechanism of injury, injury severity, age, education years, baseline audit score, baseline PHQ-9 score, and baseline drinking or binge drinking. So I used R version 4.5 for my data analysis, and descriptively, continuous variables were summarized using median and interquartile ranges. Categorical variables were summarized using frequency and percentages. And then for association, I used Pearson chi-square. Then for response rate, this was aimed to achieve percentage 0 drinking and 0 binge drinking at 3 months of follow-up. And I also used risk difference with 95% confidence to see the difference between the two groups at 3 months of follow-up. Now for objective 1, I used negative binomial regression as the primary model equation. And so for crude, I didn't include the audit. I didn't include the drink base, the audit base, and the age. So I only had the treatment arm. But for the adjusted model, I added the adjusted covariates, that is audit, according to which outcome I was using. Maybe if my outcome was total drinking days, therefore I used baseline drinking days as my covariate and age. Now, in order to increase precision, that's why I included these covariates in order to increase precision, but it's not for confounding issue, because this is already a randomized control trial, so means the confounders are already minimized from the beginning. And then for objective 2, I used the same model as the objective 1, which is negative binomial. And we can see here in this model now, I have the B3, which is the moderator parameter or the interaction term. And this is the one that actually we are going to interpret at the end of the day. So if the p-value is less than 0.05, means there is a significant moderation, that is BNI effect differ by subgroup, and if the p-value is greater than 0.5 means no moderation. For data management and analysis, I used, for model selection, I used AIC for comparison between negative binomial versus zero-inflected negative binomial to see which model is parsimonious and which model is simple. And then I used BIC because BIC penalizes the model complexity. Then I use Pearson goodness of fit to see which model absolute gives the best fit. And then lastly, I used VIF to detect multicollinearity. Coming to the results, we can see in table 1, as it shows baseline characteristics of adult injured patient at KSMC Emergency Department from 2025, we can see that all the p-values, first of all, they're above 0.05, so it means that there was equal randomization between the usual arm and the brief negotiation intervention arm. But we can see that the participants, majority of them ranged between age 29 and 40 for usual care, and then for brief intervention were age 18 to 28, and majority of them were males who had primary or less education. But we also see that the employment type was non-agriculture, and then they were married with mechanism of injury that was the major one was road traffic injury, and this injury was serious. Coming to the characteristics, we can see that majority of them ranged in hazardous injury, hazardous audit score, and they had a PHQ-9 of ranging in minimal, and yes, ranging in minimal. Coming to table 2, table 2 was aimed to see the difference between baseline characteristics and at 3 months characteristics for those variables that were actually taken at these 2 intervals. So it means I have baseline and 3 months. So we can see that for drinking days at baseline, this reduction from 6 in brief negotiation intervention and 4 in usual care was not statistically significant, but at 3 months, we can see the reduction was statistically significant. And I used the median because the data was not normally distributed. It was a skewed data, that's why I used median. Yes. Coming to binge drinking days, we can see that from the beginning, there was a flow effect that majority of participants already came with 0 binge drinking days. So with median, we saw that the results showed 0 median for all the from baseline to 3 months. So coming to table 3, table 3 shows the effect of brief negotiation intervention on reducing harmful alcohol use, and I combined this table with drinking days and binge drinking days as both outcomes. So we can see that those who were in the brief negotiation intervention arm for drinking days now as an outcome reduced by 55.5. They had a 55% reduction of harmful alcohol use compared to those who were in the usual care. And this reduction was statistically significant. But when we come to binge drinking days, yes, there was a reduction, but this reduction was not statistically significant. And this could be is reflected by the forest plot, which shows the effect of brief negotiation intervention at 3 months of follow-up. So for this case, for this forest plot, I combined the crude model, the adjusted model for multiple imputation, and then complete case to show that there was a robustness of findings, that the findings did not go against each other, but rather they complemented one another. We can see that for binge drinking days, the reduction was statistically significant for all the models, but for binge drinking days, the outcome the reduction was not statistically significant as it crossed 1, so it was not statistically significant. Coming to moderation of brief negotiation intervention effectiveness on total drinking days and adjusted intervention, we can see that there was no any moderator which showed statistically significant difference or reduction compared to the other. So all the moderators were not statistically significant. And so this was for total drinking days, and this one was for effectiveness of total drinking days, continuation of the continuous variable, and still we can see there is no any change, like there's no any variable that had significant interaction. Coming to the discussion, first of all, the 55% reduction in total drinking days that we saw is consistent with the WHO recommendation, whereby it targeted 20% reduction by 2030, and we saw from our results that we had 55% reduction. So from this, we can see that brief negotiation intervention actually reduces harmful alcohol use. Also, we see that within group reduction in both arms at 3 months, that within both arms, brief negotiation intervention and usual care, both of them reduced their harmful alcohol use, and this is reflected by the teachable moment theory that natural reduction in both arms take place because once a person sustained an injury and taken to an emergency department, it's already a teachable moment theory. Then baseline audit score independently predicts binge drinking. As we can see, for every increase in audit score point, there is an increase in harmful alcohol use. And this is consistent with studies that were also conducted in high-income countries. And it shows that audits can actually predict harmful alcohol use of an alcohol drinker. But also, no significant moderation supports universal delivery approach, whereby different studies have shown that first of all, there is no significant moderation by sex and education, and this was a huge or the largest meta-analysis data that was conducted with 12,074 participants, but it showed that there was no statistical significant moderation. So it means that actually the brief intervention should be given to all participants universally without considering which group will benefit more. Coming to the strength of the study, this study was the convergent validity across 4 independent analytic approach. We can see that for all the population analysis that I used, the intention to treat per protocol 1, which is complete case, and the one which I combined only 2 arms, which are boosters, they all show the same results. And then the study used validated tools that could be used for Tanzania, and that means they used the ones that could actually match with the language and content of our culture. But also, coming to the limitation, we can see there's a flow effect of binge drinking. Like 92% of the observed participants reported 0 binge drinking at 3 months in both arms. So we could not really capture that statistical significant reduction, although we can see that there is a trend that binge drinking reduced, but we couldn't capture that. Reduction statistically significant, but clinically there is a reduction. Also, there was use of self-reported alcohol outcomes, which potentially introduced social disability bias, and no female-specific moderation was used. And this is it's not because study enrolled predominantly male, or was it a sample decision? No, it just happened that that is the way the participant actually came at the emergency department. But also we can see that the study was done under a single tertiary hospital, and hence this limited generalizability. So at the end, we recommend that for healthcare providers at KSMC Emergency Department to formalize audit screening at the triage for all positive injured patients. And this is because we have seen from the results that for every increase in audit score point, there is increase in harmful alcohol use. But also for future research, we recommend that there should be a prospective moderation study with 12 months of follow-up. And this is because it will help us increase the sample size. And at this point, at 12 months, we'll see the effect of teachable moment theory will have already worn off. So we'll see the truth of what is actually happening. If the harmful alcohol use was decreased with time or just relapsed after some time. In conclusion, PPKY significantly reduced total drinking days compared in those who received a brief negotiation intervention compared to those who received
Let's just wait a bit. We lost you when you were going through the conclusions. I'm not sure if you wanted to maybe to repeat that, or if there were any other slides you want to go through.
Yeah, was I lost at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So, in conclusion, I said PPKY significantly reduced total drinking days compared to usual care for those who received brief negotiation intervention. And then binge drinking days reduction is clinically meaningful, but not significant due to the flow effect and not the absence of the effect. But also baseline audit score independently predicts binge drinking at follow-up. And it can be used as a prognostic value beyond screening. Also, lastly but not least, no significant moderation across all 10 characteristics means that PPKY is effective for all eligible patients. That means all patients should actually receive this brief negotiation intervention in order to reduce the harmful alcohol use and the consequences that accompany it. So to put everything in a nutshell, PPKY should be integrated into routine KSMC emergency department clinic care with audit score used for step-up care and follow-up among alcoholic injured patients. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Doreen. I see there's a lot of comments in the chat that we will share with you in writing so that you can go through those. So we don't necessarily have to talk about all those since we have limited time. Did you have it before we go into some comments from others? I know Catherine is eager to share. Do you have any concerns yourself of some areas that you think you need some feedback?
Yes. Well, I was able to present this presentation at the department, and one of the challenge that I received was how much was the reduction between, okay, you couldn't see the difference between the gender, that is male and female, because of the number of participants. So it means if you put the gender into the model, it will actually not converge, but were you in any way able to see how females compared to males reduced binge drinking or total drinking days, in order to be able at least to say that, okay, females in my study reduced more compared to males, although this is just a descriptive. So that is a challenge that I got, and I had to go work on that one.
Did you find the answer in the data, or you're still not sure?
I found, I wanted to share, because can you see this
Yeah.
Word document? Okay.
Yes.
So okay, so this is descriptive change by sex, and we can see, going direct to the table, we can see that for drinking days, males had 8.38 at baseline, and at 3 months they had 3.72. Females had 5.07 and at baseline, and at 3 months they had 0.83. While for binge drinking, males had 1.74 mean, and at 3 months, males had 0.6, and females had 1.06, and at 3 months they had 0.06, which could also be actually seen in this graph, in this figure. So we can see that there was a very huge decrease in total drinking days for women. Women were already, their drinking days were already, they started already at, let's say, at 5, and they reduced, but also males started with higher, but also they reduced. Yeah. So this is the change that I could descriptively tell, but I couldn't go for analytical change because of the challenge of the participants, number of participants.
Well, and this is pooling all both groups, or
Yes.
what? Okay, so interesting. I mean, I think it answers the question, doesn't it? But we don't have the power to say much about it because this is based on a small number of women, and I would doubt it would be significant anyways, if you look at the difference in the differences. It's interesting that you're closing the gap a bit. One thing I wanted to add, which I put in the chat here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, who has her hand up, is related to this, which again, in this one, you're not even looking at the intervention itself, which remember is your intention. When you said in one of the last slides that you said the intervention is equally effective for all participants. I don't think you can say that because you didn't necessarily have the power to establish that. You can say that there was no difference found in the subgroups, but that doesn't mean that it was just as effective for every participant. Because if we look at individual participant data, we can see that that's not the case. There are certainly participants who changed a lot more than other participants. It's just that in the moderation analysis that we looked at, the subgroups, there was no significant difference found.
Doreen, I just want to tell you this was really nicely done. Congratulations. Part of our job is to find little holes, and so the littler the hole, the better job you did. So, really nicely done. You should be very proud of this work. The feedback that I have for you is going to be big picture feedback because I think that you have the details and the methods quite well described. What I want you to think about is I think that you left a little bit of a gap in terms of why of the moderators in the very beginning. Understanding moderators is really important, but I think you talked around it, but you didn't say it exactly. So I want you to work on being very concise to say exactly why understanding moderators is important. If there are some subgroups that do not work, this intervention does not work well for, we might have to change the intervention. That is like the basis of what it is, right? If we have some subgroups that are not getting the benefit, we have to think about another option, another intervention, another supplemental support, etc. So thinking about from education level, if those with a lower education level don't do well, maybe we need to reduce the education level or the literacy requirement on those for that group, or at least be more focused to it. The second thing is going to be alignment. So you have a lot of conclusions and they don't all align with what your objectives are. That is going to get you into trouble. So make sure that your objectives are very much aligned with your results and conclusions. So demonstrating that the audit is predictive. We're not even going to go into the fact that we're not going to talk about how audit and predictive and that kind of stuff. That's not one of your objectives. And so by including that, you're going to open yourself up to reviewers saying, why are you talking about this? How does this have to do with your trial? And so I would go back to what your original objectives are and understand what are the specific results that answer the question in those objectives and stick to those. Because I think it not only aligns your process, but then also allows you to focus on the discussion a little more. The next is your discussion points. I want you to pull it back a little bit and focus more what your specific objectives are to your discussion points, because some of your discussion points I think are a little bit broad and large and maybe too much for the bulk of the time that you have to be able to describe it. And you can pull back a little bit and say more of the higher level components. And then similarly, I would have less words on the slides, but making them a little bit more compact. So I think I left a note that said like there was a statement that you said on one of the limitations that I didn't understand what it was. So it was the floor effect on binge drinking. You can say that in a way that is just the fact that many people had 0 binge drinking events. And the same understanding of what's happening is coming across, and everybody is going to understand that. But you also have to then go further from that specific point to understanding the interpretation of the impact of that point, and then how that should be taken in the context of your analysis. So I would say you have to work a little bit on making things more concise and more deep, which I know sounds opposite, but taking the thought process a little bit further along for each of the points that you're stating in a concise way, because I know you don't have a lot of time. So really nicely done. I really enjoyed it and totally understood moderation. So nicely done.
All right. Other comments or questions for Doreen? Doreen, were there other criticisms that from presenting to the department or anything that you feel are a bit unresolved or otherwise confusing?
No, because I got like 3 times to present this, and one among the comments that I received is that not having significant is also results.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is something that I was really worried about.
Mhm.
But yeah, I didn't get much of questioning, but rather to improve my limitations. The part that you spoke about, Prof. Catherine, the chapter 5, the strength limitation, conclusion, then discussion, to be precise and to know exactly what to say so that I don't have confusing words. Otherwise, it was a good presentation that I can say I had in the department.
Yeah, so I'll ask you here, Doreen, why do you think it's important to have negative results? Like, what does that mean? What is the interpretation?
So, for my understanding is that if you get negative results, the negative interaction means that there is no one specific there's no one specific group that benefited compared to the other. Like they all benefited, yes. So instead of selecting one group, it's better to give all patients the intervention than leaving the others, from my part of understanding.
So I will change your wording slightly so that we have, based on the sample size we have, because there are limitations, we have not yet found a group that we need to augment this intervention further to improve their effectiveness. Okay, you see the difference is specifically is that one, we have a very small sample size. It always will feel like it is. And then two, our goal would be to augment or to change the intervention to support that group more if we find it, but we haven't found one yet. And so as of this data, this negative data essentially tells us not that we should implement it for everyone, but that the current implementation does not need to be augmented or changed to better support a certain group.
Yeah, because I had a question like if I say that we did not have enough sample size, my question will be why did you go to do it anyway if you knew you don't have enough sample size? So that's why
So it's
I
a
didn't.
clinical trial, so we have what we have. And if we found something, then obviously, even with a lower sample size, and we have a lot of work to do. And then similarly, there are only some things that we have a limited sample size, like women. Other things we have more of a sample size and we can make a stronger argument for.
Okay.
Yeah, and adding to that level, although this is a secondary analysis, this is empowered. As Catherine said, this is, primary data collection, which is really hard to come by. It is, of course, we've got to recognize those limitations, and we often are used to using secondary data collections from registry, etc. But this is to show, it's one of the first trials, I mean, at least in Tanzania, that we know that the BI, the collected data on uh, primary data collection. So that in itself, has a lot of worth, and your work as well you should convey that as well, for sure.
Okay.
Winnie, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Doreen. I think I wrote it in the chat, but also like for KSMC, there is you would be expected to have a background, which is like to explain your context more in terms of before even introducing brief interventions, because like you should be able to explain Tanzania, different interventions in place. I think you're aware of that. So for the sake of KSMC guidelines, so I just wanted to bring it to your attention to be able to understand ongoing interventions or any initiatives in terms of alcohol in your background. But also you picked these two outcomes, binge drinking and number of drinking days. I'm thinking if somehow in the background we can link them to the problem or to the consequences that we see. Let's say binge drinking with injuries and the burden, like to make the problem statement more more strong, and then the need of this intervention, and then like we have brief interventions, which again they've been proven to be effective, and then like the moderation concept. So if we can bring all that together, you're going to make your rationale for the study more strong. But I also have other comments in the chat. Thank you. That was a great presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Win. I'll go through the comments.
Yeah, and just to see, I'm gonna see if there's anything we want to flag that might not be clear. I was watching the comments and making some as we went through. Important note about citations. One thing I wanted to raise, I put it in the comment here, but just to clarify further, we have limited time, so we have to be succinct, but it's not entirely accurate as you describe the intervention as just a brief intervention versus usual care, because there were multiple arms. I know that's tricky, and because the analysis is pooling the multiple intervention arms together, but just take a note there, assuming you weren't only including the BI only arm, but you were including some of the text message arms. So that's going to be something to just make sure we're explaining properly. There's a few other comments that again, we'll share these. One thing I could see, I don't know if this was raised in your previous presentations, but if you look at like slide 19, when you have your variables, it's not clear. And again, you have limited time, so I hope it's clear in your book why you chose to dichotomize some of the variables like education, employment, if that's defined well, that decision, instead of keeping some of those things in their ordinal or more diverse categorical nature.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so in the dictionary that I was provided together with the data set, now the dictionary had a lot of categories. For example, education level, we had less than primary, no education, less than primary, primary, secondary, vector. So there were a lot of categories in one variable, and these categories had very small number of participants. So if I just use them the way they are, first of all, I'm losing the power to detect any change or any interaction. So by collapsing the arms, by just putting primary or no education and secondary or higher, I'm at least increasing the power to detect any interaction or any change. So that's why I just have binary and continuous, because majority of these variables, they had so many categories. Let's say employment type, we have agriculture, non-agriculture, clerk, banker, there are a lot. So these all categories, you find some of them had 2 people, 7, 10, 6, and yet you haven't again categorize them into BNI and usual care, because from these 6 people, we again have to see who were in the intervention and who were in the usual care. So you find I don't have that number per cell that can give me the
that makes
convergence.
sense.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, as long as you're able to defend that decision, I think it sounds good. And make sure it's clear in your book.
Yes.
Okay, an important question on slide 27. I think it's slide 27. This table. There was a little comment about the labels here, which I'm sure you'll see. But also, when you interpreted this, the way you described it made it sound like you were looking at a difference in differences. It wasn't clear. So you told us the p-value, that first p-value on the like third column there is comparing BNI to usual care at baseline, which makes sense. There's no differences at baseline. Okay. And then when you looked at 3 months, based on the way this table is, it looks like what you're showing us is the difference in BNI and usual care at 3 months. However, I think what I heard you say was about a difference in differences. And that may be, but the way the table is set up, it doesn't seem to suggest that, at least in my interpretation.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do understand. So, as I said in the beginning when I was explaining this table, is that this table shows the median. Median change, yes, because my data is highly skewed, so I used median. But in the dissertation book, I've combined both. I have median and mean to show the real change and the difference in difference. That is with 500 bootstrapping method. So it's all explained, but in a slide like this one, in order to avoid a lot of complications, I just summarized. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So you can add the annotation telling us that this is a median and the interquartiles. Otherwise, we're going to think that this is the difference and the confidence interval, for instance.
Yep.
That would help.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we shared a few comments on the slide, but then on the chat, sorry, but then on slide 29 on your main figure, if you can scroll to that, please. Yes. Yeah. So here you use the symbols to denote significance, which are confusing because of the size. And you also use the symbols for crude or adjusted. They are confusing because they're too similar. I know that you do have a label on the y-axis that tells us what subset it is, crude, adjusted, and PP1. But it makes, I think that having the symbols make it more confusing. Maybe having them uniformly a single, like just a circle, and then the difference that you want to make here, you can, I don't know, maybe mark them differently, because the significance that is marked as crossing the one mark. This is a more simple version, I see.
Yes, so this is my dissertation report. Now, because if you look at the presentation, I have the
Doreen, I think we lost you.
and 43. And then I have the complete.
I'm sorry. I see Doreen went on mute. So I think we've lost her, but I think we're going to have to wrap up. So if anyone has any other feedback, again, we'll share this chat with Doreen. You guys know you can find her on Teams. Doreen, are you back?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
No problem. I'm sorry for the network challenges. So I was saying, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up, but we can continue talking.